So I had a conversation with a family member the other day, and she believes that China was allowing the virus to purposefully spread around the world to plant the COVID-19 virus in all these other countries around the world before they did anything about it. And she said, how evil is that they were planting those seeds around the
Sure.
world? So I thought that seemed odd. I did some research. I emailed her on July 12th. This is 2020. And this is what I said to her, just so you know the truth about all this stuff. I found the source of your belief about China purposefully or intentionally allowing flights out of Wuhan around the world to plant COVID-19 seeds and them being evil, as you mentioned in our phone call yesterday. According to Fact Check, it came from President Trump planting false seeds of information. Fact Check wrote, quote, President Donald Trump has twice now advanced the flawed theory that China nefariously continued to allow flights out of Wuhan, the city where the COVID-19 outbreak originated, to Western cities while blocking flights into other cities in China. Trump had said, you could fly out of Wuhan, where the primary problem was, and you could go to different parts of the world, but you couldn't go, quote, parentheses, from Wuhan to Beijing, and you couldn't go to any place in China. So what's that all about? End quote. The president asked during a Fox News virtual town hall on May 3rd, implying that China may have sought to protect itself even as it was allowing infections to spread to other countries. But that's wrong. Flight records show China did block international commercial flights out of Wuhan after January 23rd, according to Flight Radar 24, a global flight tracking service. It appears the origin of Trump's misguided speculation may be an op-ed by a Harvard professor who later updated his column to acknowledge that flight data does not confirm that China continued to allow commercial flights to various international destinations, including the U.S., after January 23rd. More than a week after the record had been set straight, though, Trump raised the bogus talking point during a press conference. This was Trump on April 29th. And then, why did China allow planes to fly out but not into China? But they allow planes to come out. And planes are coming out of Wuhan, and they're coming out. They're going all over the world. They're going to Italy, very, very big time to Italy. But they're going all over the world. But they're not going into China. What was that all about? Fact Check continues to say, Trump repeated the talking point during the Fox News virtual town hall on May 3rd. Trump said on May 3rd, what they, Chinese leaders, really treated the world badly on, they stopped people going into China, but they didn't stop people going into the USA and all over the world. So you could fly out of Wuhan, where the primary problem was, all of the problems essentially, also where the lab is. But you could fly out of Wuhan and you could go to different parts of the world, but you couldn't go to Beijing and you couldn't go to any place in China. So what's that all about? Fact Check said, we reached out to the White House to find out where the president was getting his information, but we did not get a response. It appears the origin may be a column by historian and author Niall Ferguson in the London Sunday Times on April 5th, in which he discussed questions that ought to be posed to Chinese President Xi Jinping about, among them, quote, after it became clear that there was a full-blown epidemic spreading from Wuhan to the rest of Hubei province, why did you cut off travel from Hubei to the rest of China on January 23rd, but not from Hubei to the rest of the world? Hubei province is where the city of Wuhan is located. Ferguson, a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution at Stanford University and a senior faculty fellow of the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs at Harvard, continued, quote, January is always a peak month for travel from China to Europe and America because of the Lunar New Year holiday. As far as I can tell from the available records, however, regular direct flights from Wuhan continue to run to London, Paris, Rome, New York, and San Francisco throughout January, and in some cases into February. You have lost no time in restricting international travel into China Now that COVID-19 has gone global, your approach was conspicuously different when you were exporting it to us. Okay, then January 23rd date is significant because that is the day China implemented severe travel restrictions on Wuhan, halting train and air travel from the bustling city of 11 million people. That measure came 2 days after the country's leading disease specialist, Zhang Nanshan, said in a press briefing that, quote, since it is known that the virus can be transmitted from people to people, one thing to do is to strictly quarantine patients and track close contacts, which is probably the most important thing, according to a timeline published by China. By that time, the virus was already known to have spread outside China, with the first recorded case in Thailand on January 13th. However, the premise of Ferguson's column that China continued to allow flights from Wuhan to various international destinations, including the U.S., after January 23rd, even as China cut off travel between Wuhan and the rest of China, was later contested by Daniel Bell, Dean of the School of Political Science and Public Administration at Shandong University in China. In a post to his website dated April 21st, Bell said he reached out to Ferguson via email and that Ferguson provided his sourcing. But upon closer inspection, Bell wrote, quote, the sources he sent did not support the allegation that there were regular commercial flights from Wuhan to the U.S. and Europe after January 23rd, and in some cases into February, while data Ferguson provided from Global Flight Tracker Flight Stats seemed to show that 31 flights left from Wuhan to cities in the U.S. and Europe on or after January 23rd, when Bell checked those against data from a website for the Civil Aviation Administration of China, he found that most of those flights were canceled, and a handful of others originating in Guangzhou that, quote, in normal times would do a stopover in Wuhan on the way, end quote, to San Francisco, instead flew direct from Guangzhou, bypassing Wuhan. The records show that flights out of Wuhan to the rest of the world stopped around midday on the 23rd, the same day China stopped flights from Wuhan to the rest of China, Bell wrote. Bell wrote, if the Chinese government did allow regular flights from Wuhan to Western countries after January 23rd, it suggests that Chinese government deliberately allowed, if not encouraged, the spread of the virus to 5 cities in Western countries after it tried to control it in China. We spoke to Ian Petchenik, the Director of Communications for Flight Radar 24, a global flight tracking service, and Petchenik confirmed that, quote, there were no more normal commercial flights from Wuhan after January 23rd. They did stop people from going to the U.S. and to the rest of the world, he said. After January 23rd, flight data shows there were a few flights from Wuhan to destinations in Asia outside of China, Petchenik told us, but those may have been mostly empty planes returning to their base country. There were also a handful of flights from Wuhan chartered by the U.S. State Department to evacuate American citizens, including diplomats and their families, beginning on January 28th. Passengers on those planes were flown to military bases in California and were mandated to complete a 14-day quarantine. On April 21st, Ferguson provided an update to his April 5 column in which he acknowledged, quote, data from sensors tracking actual flight paths would seem to indicate that no flights left from Wuhan itself to other countries in the world after January 23rd. Ferguson wrote that he reached out to the U.S. company Flightspin and that officials there, quote, concluded that it was very unlikely indeed that any flights had gone from Wuhan to Western cities after January 23rd, end quote.
Yeah.
Believed to be happening that wasn't really happening, and what was being spoken with accusations that is proving itself to be, not true.
Well, and again, it's, you've got data saying yes, data saying maybe, data saying not sure, because it could be empty planes going back. So it's not 100% accurate, but it's clearer than, oh, they're just flying around dropping seeds of coronavirus everywhere.
Well, as of January 23rd, though, China did their lockdown.
Well, the 28th.
The 23rd. January 23rd.
But there was stuff on the 28th that went out as well.
Which they said would have been empty planes going back
Possibly.
to home base.
That's what I meant. So that's what I'm
because
saying.
other flights were canceled.
Yeah.
And then any flights that did a stopover in Wuhan didn't. They just did
Correct.
a direct flight.
Yeah.
So there was some flight activity, but it doesn't appear to be what President Trump
No,
is assuming
it doesn't. I mean,
was, and this Ferguson guy
Right.
thought and said it was.
right, and how family members are believing it to be. So it's a perpetual. I'm going to keep this going, whether it's right or wrong. I'm going to keep it going because I kind of like the conspiracy. I like what's happening here, and it's creating them to be the bad people. So we're just going to keep rolling this ball and make it.
Which is why I dug in to find out the
I know.
truth behind all this.
It's like nobody wants to know the real truth. They just want to keep this perpetuating conspiracy going to make this drama.
With accusations
Right.
that
As if
is
it's
it true
right.
or
But
is
not
it
knowing.
a lie?
Right, and not knowing the full truth,
Right.
but speaking it as if it is.
Correct. And spreading that around like a bad virus.
Exactly.
And it's being spread around Christians
Oh yeah.
that are believing
Everybody.
this and
Everybody. Yeah.
spreading
Yeah.
bad virus seeds in the form of
See,
lies
again,
and
it's
false
not that
accusations.
it's Christian or non-Christian. It's Christians should stop and say, wait a minute,
Yes.
is this right or not?
But I'm finding Christians are spreading it all along, believing it and passing it on,
Right.
spreading it like
No
a bad
different
virus.
in the world.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly.
So Ferguson added that, quote, "We now know that by that time, January 23rd, thousands of infected citizens had already left Wuhan for other parts of China. So a ban on all flights out of China would have been needed to prevent the epidemic becoming a global pandemic. That is how COVID-19 spread so rapidly to the rest of the world," Ferguson said. And it was happening long before January 23rd because the Chinese authorities, for whatever reason, waited until that late date to place their cordon sanitaire, however you say that word, around Hubei. The Trump administration announced travel restrictions to and from China on January 31st, effective February 2nd. Okay, so President Trump is hearing of all this stuff. He doesn't do any travel restrictions, according to this report from Fact Check, that he didn't do any travel restrictions to and from China until January 31st, effective on February 2nd. Now, China had already done a huge massive lockdown with no more travel on January 23rd,
Well, and then we also
8 days prior.
we also evacuated a bunch of our American people from there on the 23rd.
Apparently, according to this. So flights were going on, getting people back home,
Right. And
possibly
so
empty planes.
why they weren't stopping
returning to
it at
base.
that point, and saying, okay, no more travel after we get all you out of here.
Well,
and
that's
back home.
probably what happened.
Well, but it went till the 31st. You see, 7 days,
Yeah, 8 days.
8 days, 9 days.
But not
before
even
they're done?
effective until February 2nd.
That's what I mean. So that's odd. I mean, he could have made it effective that there would be no more flights anywhere except for the people that have to come home. You could have immediately put that into place.
Correct. So yeah, none of this. It all kind of
And we could have gone over
delayed.
there. We could have gone over there with our instead of commercial flights, we could have gone over there with a military plane,
Yeah,
picked up everybody,
yeah,
and then kept it quarantined right there.
yeah.
This whole thing was just dumb,
So according,
badly
Orchestrated, 'cause
or
it
confined.
seemed like it. Well, I'll get to some of this later too, where China, I think, was trying to figure out, is this really a pandemic or is this
Well,
just?
of course, they don't know yet.
And Trump seemed to do the same thing. The
Well,
same
nobody
thing
was gonna wanna
China
call
was
it-
doing.
Nobody wants to call this a pandemic. You
So
kidding?
there's these wait and delays to find out. And then when they find out it's a pandemic, now they're going back with the finger pointing and the blame,
Of course.
even though our own president was in the beginning saying, no big deal, we got all under control. I'll get to that in a moment.
All 15 people.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment.
Sorry.
So okay, so where am I? All right. So according to a New York Times report on April 4th, nearly 40,000 people had arrived in the U.S. on direct flights from China since Trump imposed those travel restrictions. I don't know what that's all about. According
Well,
to a
getting
New
everybody
York
back, they're
Times
probably out
report
visiting.
on April 4th, nearly 40,000 people had arrived in the U.S. on direct flights from China since Trump imposed those travel restrictions. So there's travel restrictions imposed in China and the United States, and according to New York Times, nearly 40,000 people had arrived in the U.S. on direct flights from China.
It could be just all those that are over there and now they're being called back.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So, whether China should have halted air travel to and from Wuhan sooner than January 23rd or cut off international travel to and from all of China rather than just Hubei is a different issue, however, than the one raised by Trump. In an article in the Economic Times on April 30th noted that while China cut domestic travel from Wuhan to other Chinese cities in late January, it continued to encourage international travel from other cities in China, and it wasn't until March 26th that China, fearing the outbreak of a second wave of coronavirus from overseas, banned all foreigners from traveling to China. But that's not what Trump said either. Trump said China continued to allow flights from Wuhan to destinations around the world, including the U.S., at the same time that it banned travel from Wuhan into other parts of China. That's incorrect. Okay, so this is all according to Fact Check. I then wrote, and as reported, President Trump didn't seem to take the virus seriously himself when told about it, just like the Chinese government seemed unsure of its seriousness in the beginning when their doctors were first discovering it and trying to treat and figure it out without knowing yet what it was exactly until more were getting sick and patients started dying and everything they were trying to do to treat it wasn't working and were realizing it was airborne and contagious and could then test for it and began reporting to officials. So, independent news reported on March 18th, again, this is 2020, as the U.S. takes more and more drastic steps to try and stop the spread of coronavirus, Donald Trump is taking pains to reiterate that he understands the gravity of the crisis. I always treated the Chinese virus very seriously, he tweeted, and I have done a very good job from the beginning, including my very early decision to close the borders from China, against the wishes of almost all. Many lives were saved. The fake news narrative is disgraceful and false. End quote. While he himself reports false news. Quote, this is still according to Independent News Report. Yet just 9 days before that spiky missive, Mr. Trump took quite a different tack. Quote, so last year, 37,000 Americans died from the common flu. It averages between 27,000 and 70,000 per year. Nothing is shut down. Life and the economy go on. At this moment, there are 546 confirmed cases of coronavirus with 22 deaths. Think about that. End quote. Since that tweet, the number of coronavirus cases in the U.S. has surged, and the Trump administration has announced austere new guidance to help Americans keep the virus at bay. But whatever he says now, the president who speaks about the coronavirus crisis today sounds very different to the one who's been tweeting about it since January. Here are 5 examples of Mr. Trump's views on the crisis that show what a journey he's been on. So this tweet came out February 24th. Trump says, the coronavirus is very much under control in the USA. We are in contact with everyone in all relevant countries. CDC and World Health have been working hard and very smart. Stock market starting to look very good to me. Mr. Trump has a habit of taking credit for supposedly healthy markets and doesn't always ground his claims in reality. This is still according to Independent News Report. This tweet came as the Dow Jones and S&P 500 saw their worst daily decline since 2018. Not a good day to invoke them as an indication the crisis was under control, as we know it wasn't. The next day, February 25th, he tweets, crying, Chuck Schumer is complaining for publicity purposes only that I should be asking for more money than $2.5 billion to prepare for coronavirus. If I asked for more, he would say it is too much. He didn't like my early travel closings. I was right. He is incompetent. Independent News reports Chuck Schumer, the Democratic leader in the Senate, is one of Mr. Trump's favorite antagonists and regularly finds himself the target of the president's ire. Here, Mr. Trump goes after him for requesting $8.5 billion in emergency funding to fight the outbreak. All right, so then on the next day after that, February 26th, Donald Trump tweets, low ratings, fake news, MSDNC, Comcast, and CNN are doing everything possible to make the coronavirus look as bad as possible, including panicking markets if possible. Likewise, their incompetent, do-nothing Democrat comrades are all talk, no action. USA in great shape! Exclamation mark. Another tweet indicating skewed priorities, not only misspelling the name of the virus, but also focusing on perceived media bias rather than the outbreak itself. While this one does at least acknowledge some risk to the markets beyond Mr. Trump's control, the judgment, quote, USA in great shape, turns out to have been disastrously wide off the mark. Okay, then the day after that, February 27th, Donald Trump tweets, anti-Trump network CNN doing whatever it can to stoke a national coronavirus panic. The far left network pretty much ignoring anyone who they interview who doesn't blame President Trump. Media refuses to discuss the great job our professionals are doing! Exclamation mark. Mr. Trump is extremely sensitive to any implication he may be even partly accountable for the severity of the crisis, and here he cites Fox News host Trish Regan defending him against CNN's supposed attempts to smear him. However, Ms. Regan's tirade accusing Democrats of engineering, quote, mass hysteria to encourage a market sell-off, end quote, and trying to stage a second impeachment ended up backfiring, with her show moved from its primetime slot after a storm of complaints. Okay, so then there's this map put out, map coronavirus global deaths past 500,000. This doesn't say when, but it was all in line with this stuff in date order according to Independent News. All right, so then that same day, okay, so that one where he said media refuses to discuss the great job our professionals are doing and all that.
Sorry, go ahead.
That same day, he tweets, so the coronavirus, which started in China and spread to various countries throughout the world, but very slowly in the U.S. because President Trump closed our border and ended flights very early, all caps, is now being blamed by the do-nothing Democrats to be the fault of Trump. So again, now this is Trump's profile tweet that supposedly he's tweeting.
Yeah.
But obviously is in a different, coming from a different person in his name, as if he's tweeting, but not talking about Trump.
Unless he's talking in second person or whatever you call it.
Again, Mr. Trump's umbrage at being blamed for the spread of the virus within the U.S. borders takes the reins. But again, he ignores the fact that at this point, there was no evidence the virus spread was notably slower in the U.S. than elsewhere, while implicitly dismissing any criticisms of him as mere character assassination. Okay, footage from 2018. What is this? Footage from 2018 has now resurfaced in which Mr. Trump explains why he was cutting various public health agencies. In typically blunt fashion, he says, I'm a business person. I don't like having thousands of people around when you don't need them. Now the coronavirus pandemic threatens to profoundly disrupt his country. He denies knowing the cuts ever happened.
Oh. How convenient.
I know. This is the problem we're dealing with.
Yeah.
A lot of. Okay, ABC News reported on April 23rd, 2020, a list of events up until that date. Here's a brief summary. December 31st, 2019. WHO, World Health Organization, says mysterious pneumonia sickening dozens in China. Health authorities in China confirm that dozens of people in Wuhan, China are being treated for pneumonia from an unknown source. January 11th, 2020. China reports first novel coronavirus death. January 21st, 2020. First confirmed case in the United States. A man in his 30s from Washington State who traveled to Wuhan is diagnosed with novel coronavirus. Japan, South Korea, and Thailand also report their first cases 1 day prior. January 23rd, 2 days later, China imposes strict lockdown in Wuhan. China imposes aggressive containment measures in Wuhan, the epicenter of the outbreak, suspending flights and trains and shutting down subways, buses, and ferries in an attempt to stem the spread of the virus. January 30th, 2020, WHO declares global health emergency. So the World Health Organization declares a global health emergency on January 30th. February 5th, Diamond Princess cruise ship quarantine. More than 3,600 passengers are quarantined on a cruise ship off the coast of Yokohama, Japan. February 26th, first case of suspected local transmission in United States. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention confirms the first case of COVID-19 in a patient in California with no travel history to an outbreak area nor contact with anyone diagnosed with the virus. Okay. February 29th, first death reported in United States. The first COVID-19 death is reported in Washington State after a man with no travel history to China dies on February 28th.
28th or 29th?
He died on February 28th, and February 29th it's reported.
Oh.
Okay, March 3rd. CDC lifts restrictions for virus testing. The CDC issues new guidance that allows anyone to be tested for the virus without restriction. Previously, only those who had traveled to an outbreak area who had close contact with people diagnosed with COVID-19 or those with severe symptoms could get tested. March 13th, 2020, Trump declares national emergency. Okay, so all of that stuff was already happening and taking place. The World Health Organization already declared a national emergency.
So a month and a half, basically, before we realized this was a pandemic in our country.
Yeah, because by December, the World Health Organization is starting to hear about it.
Yep.
China reports the first death in January. First case confirmed in the United States, January 21st. China does the lockdown and no travel, January 23rd. January 30th, World Health Organization declares global health emergency. February 5th, the cruise ship is quarantined. February 26th, first case of suspected local transmission in the United States with no one that flew. February 29th, first death reported in the United States. March 3rd, testing restrictions are lifted. Anyone can get testing. That was March 3rd. Now, March 13th, Trump declares national emergency. According to these reports, announcements were made months prior as China was confirming and had already restricted their travel. President Trump declares a U.S. national emergency, which he says will open up $50 billion in federal funding to fight COVID-19. March 15th, 2020, CDC warns against large gatherings. March 17th, coronavirus now present in all 50 states. So he didn't declare a national emergency until the 13th. 4 days later, coronavirus is now present in all 50 states.
Which is, okay, so you've got...
We got planes, trains, and automobiles. Garbage man, we'll have to stop right now and come back to this. Cicadas should start chiming in any moment. They should be waking up soon. So anyway, March 13th, Trump declares national emergency. March 15th, the CDC warns against large gatherings. March 17th, 4 days after he declares national emergency, coronavirus now present in all 50 states.
Yeah, which is pretty amazing that it's now in 50 states within a month. And the flu...
Well, 2 months, because January 23rd is when China locked down.
Yes.
But even a little bit prior to that, we already knew about it.
Yeah,
So
but I mean,
January
it didn't get
23rd
over here till the 29th in Washington State.
Was that what it was?
Yeah.
January 21st.
Okay.
A man in his 30s from Washington State.
So-
First case confirmed in United States, January 21st.
But what's pretty amazing though is, okay, everybody's, oh, it's the flu. It kills 30,000 to 70,000 a year. We don't close everything down. We're talking a month and a half to 2 months, and it's in 50 states from
Yeah.
zero. From ground to zero
within
to
2
that.
months.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more aggressive than the flu.
That kills that many in a year.
Right.
All this has now gotten condensed into a
months.
weeks, like weeks
Well,
and then months.
Yeah. So it's this is what I don't understand, why people aren't getting it. It's different.
And the other problem is, like we've talked about before, is that they kept saying, we don't know what this is.
Right.
Whereas other things they could say, oh, this is SARS. Oh, this is coronavirus. Or this is Ebola or tuberculosis. These things we know, these things we have vaccines for or antibiotics for, these things we can treat.
Right.
But all of a sudden they're like, okay, we don't know what this is. We don't know what this is going to do. And all of a sudden it's spreading rapidly. And we have some people getting like pneumonia and dying. And we don't know where it came from. We don't have a treatment for this. We don't have a vaccine for this.
Right.
We have no idea if this is going to be a short thing or a super bad worldwide thing. So it takes that cumbersome time. Like, do we sound the alarm or do we wait till we can further figure this out, which
Well,
would have started in China.
Right, but the thing is, again, now, even after now knowing all this, we're still like, it's no different. It kills, people die of AIDS or car accidents or, whatever.
Cancer,
It's like,
cigarette smoking. It's like
What
cancer's
is
not
it?
contagious.
None of these are
Cigarette smoking is
contagious.
not.
gunshot wounds aren't contagious. I mean, you can't compare these things.
No, I know, and that's what's
And-
so weird.
And it's like, okay, no masks, no this, no that. It's like, you're taking away my rights. It's like, we're trying to keep everybody safe until we figure this out.
Yes.
Just work with us for a little bit. It's like, what is wrong with people? They've gone like wacko with this thing, and they don't even know what it is, and yet they all speak as if they do.
Yeah,
And
well,
it's
now
a,
they
it's
know.
a waste of our time and our lives because blah blah blah. It's like, just deal with it for a short time period.
Well, and then when they say we only have 500,000 deaths worldwide, it's like maybe because we did a shuttering, maybe because we
Right.
right away sheltered,
Right.
and we stopped that
Well,
massive
but then
spread.
you got the doctors on the Tony Robbins thing saying, no, the after effect trauma is even worse than the pandemic.
Taking more lives.
More lives with alcoholism and suicides and this, and I can show you the data. It's like,
Well, and
Ay.
that's not even the case, and that'll be another broadcast. But even he said, I know this one guy.
right.
It's like, okay,
Yeah,
you
okay.
got one. People
But-
kill
but it's
themselves
more-
all the
yeah,
time
but it's bigger than you.
over all kinds of issues, including health problems. But yep, not that oh,
No, I mean, I'm not negating this, and I'm not suggesting these things aren't relevant to the situation, because everybody being sequestered and closed in will drive you crazy. I get all that. But the problem is that we're getting into my rights are being violated.
our government is tyrannical,
tyrannical,
breaking the Constitution.
people are hurting each other verbally and physically because of this. Then we go into this Black Lives Matters issue from this, and they tear down statues and loot, and
Yeah, but
it's just
again,
becoming-
don't
what
mix
I'm
that with
saying
this
is-
because it has nothing to do with the virus.
Yes, it does. It all came from this virus, and then the killing of that man.
Okay,
So
stop.
all these
No,
things.
the Black Lives Matter didn't come from the virus. The Black Lives Matter happened during the pandemic with the police officer who
Yes.
killed that guy. So it's two separate issues, but two big major issues that
But they
one
all
started.
mingled.
No,
they
this
did.
one started and then this one happened. And they're both, going forward very strong.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with COVID-19. And COVID-19 was then given its name because coronavirus, they're familiar with coronaviruses, coronavirus flu. But this one, they said this strain they have not seen
Correct.
before. And then they gave it the name COVID-19, co from corona and VI from virus. D from disease, and then they gave it the number 19. I've never heard why 19.
Well, probably because there's 19 strains of COVID.
Sorry, thank you, my lord. You just corrected me because it started December 2019.
Oh,
So COVID-19, and that now is a whole new virus that the CDC and World Health Organization is saying this is a brand new virus. Okay, so we don't know this virus. We're not familiar with this virus. We do not have a vaccine for this virus. We have no idea what this virus is going to do, the outcome of this virus is going to be. And once they found out it's spreading airborne, that's like, now this is bad. Okay, this isn't like cancer where you're not going to get it from someone else. And this isn't like your typical flu, you know, where you're going to get the flu and be sick for a few days and then, okay, you can go back to work.
no, it's going on ventilators and
This one is respiratory.
bad.
Like, it can attack your lungs.
Yep.
You can't breathe.
Right.
The only thing I will say, Black Lives Matter correlate with COVID-19 is we can't breathe from this virus and we're on ventilators, and they're saying we can't breathe.
Because
because
they're choking them.
George Floyd said, I can't breathe,
Right.
and he died.
Right.
These people on ventilators, sick with this new virus, can't breathe, and many of them are dying. That's the only correlation, but they're not from the same thing.
No, it just happened to overlap, and it just was, the whole thing became out of control everywhere for all these things.
Yeah, which I can understand why China was kind of like, look, we're not going to sound the alarm and say this is a pandemic, because then there becomes pandemic hysteria.
Right.
President Trump was kind of like, well, you know, I'm not doing anything. We have it all under control. He wants the stock market to keep surging and people to keep going out and buying, and he wants to see money increase. Money, increase. And then it wasn't until the World Health Organization, it says, okay, this is a pandemic. And the CDC is like, March 15th, you know, warning against large gatherings. Well, on the 13th, Trump finally had to declare a national emergency. He was basically forced to because of all this.
Right.
So then on the 17th, it's present in all 50 states. Then also on the 17th, Northern Californians ordered to shelter in place. March 18th, China reports no new local infections. March 19th, Italy's death toll surpasses China. March 20th, New York City declared U.S. outbreak epicenter. March 24th, Japan postpones Olympics. March 24th, India announces 21-day complete lockdown. March 26th, United States leads the world in COVID-19 cases. March 27th,
That's
Trump...
exactly 2 months.
Yeah.
And now we're the leader in the whole world.
Of the cases.
Yeah.
Not the overcoming and the great and wonderful test and the cure.
No.
No, the virus itself.
Right.
On March 26th and March 27th, Trump signs $2 trillion stimulus bill, which when we go back to that, where that other Chuck guy was saying 2.5 billion. He's like, crying Chuck Schumer's complaining for publicity purposes only that I should be asking for more money than 2.5 billion to prepare. Now he ends up in 2 trillion. Yeah, 2 trillion stimulus bill. March 27th, UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson tests positive. I know he was in the hospital. I heard that on the news. April 2nd, global case hits 1 million. April 9th, evidence that first COVID-19 cases in New York City came from Europe. A new study finds evidence that the first COVID-19 cases in New York City originated in Europe and occurred as early as February. Researchers traced the origin of New York City's outbreak and found it was primarily linked to untracked transmission between the U.S. and Europe. Untracked transmission between the U.S. and Europe, with limited evidence showing direct introductions from China or other countries in Asia. Do I have time for one more?
Yeah.
April 21st, 2020, autopsy reveals first U.S. COVID-19 death was earlier than previously thought. I said, I hope you understand now with these reports that what you believe about China and them being evil by intentionally allowing the virus to spread isn't true, along with where that source of belief came from. Love. Hugs and kisses. Okay, so now we go on to the next series. Okay, so I emailed that to her. She responded back saying whether China seeded other countries at all or on purpose is up for debate, of course. The bottom line is thousands of people all over the world wouldn't have gotten sick, with many who died, if China had been upfront and honest from the beginning. China covered up and lied. That alone caused many deaths. So I dove into that. I said, yes. Unfortunately, it is reported that China lied, but by not reporting the true size of the outbreak. The New York Post wrote, Dr. Li Wenliang, the heroic whistleblower, tried to warn the public about the coronavirus December 2019. He was detained, charged with spreading false rumors, and accused of seriously disrupting social order. It is also reported that he died from the virus, and the, quote, Chinese government exonerated Li and offered a solemn apology to his family in mid-March, more than a month after he died from the virus in early February. But to accuse them of being evil and spreading false rumors that they were intentionally or purposefully trying to infect the world appears to be a lie also, which disrupts social order and kills the truth. And truth is never up for debate. I said, but President Trump appears to have done the same thing China did. For President Trump said on the 22nd of January, we have it totally under control. It's going to be just fine. And it was reported the very next day, January 23rd, that China had reported that there had been 440 cases and 17 deaths, and a noticeable increase from the day before when there were only 300 cases and 6 deaths. Chinese officials are warning people to stay away from Wuhan, the province where the outbreak began. For on the 23rd of January, China imposed strict lockdowns. Then on the 30th of January, the World Health Organization declares a global health emergency, and National Public Radio reported WHO Director General Tedros saying, over the past few weeks, we have witnessed the emergence of a previously unknown pathogen, which has escalated into an unprecedented outbreak and which has not been met by an unprecedented response. And Tedros was adamant that the main reason for the declaration is not because of what is happening in China, but because of what is happening in other countries. This vote is not a declaration of no confidence in China. He said that the WHO is deeply concerned about what will happen if the virus begins spreading in countries with weak health systems, and that the purpose of the declaration is to help those countries. Also on the 30th, the CDC confirmed the first person-to-person transmission in the United States. And the CDC Director Robert Redfield says the immediate risk to the American public is low, while President Trump said, we think we have it very well under control. We have very little problem in this country at this moment. 5. And those people are all recuperating successfully. But we're working very closely with China and other countries, and we think it's going to have a very good ending for it, so that I can assure you. Then on the 24th of February, President Trump said, the coronavirus is very much under control in the USA, and stock markets starting to look very good to me. Presumably not wanting to seriously disrupt social order, just like the Chinese government didn't want to do. Then the next day, on the 25th of February, President Trump said, you may ask about the coronavirus, which is very well under control in our country. We have very few people with it, and the people that have it are getting better. They're all getting better. As far as what we're doing with the new virus, I think that we're doing a great job. As the Chinese government probably thought they were doing also, as to not alarm everyone and cause a fear pandemic and disrupt social order while trying to figure out the virus and get it under control. Politico also reports the FDA Commissioner Stephen Hahn says coronavirus will likely affect the nation's medical supply chain. And Nancy Messonnier, director of the CDC's National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases, says an outbreak is inevitable. Disruption to everyday life might be severe, she warns. Then Larry Kudlow, White House economic advisor, said, we have contained this. I won't say airtight, but pretty close to airtight. We have done a good job in the United States. On the 26th of February, President Trump said, and again, when you have 15 people And the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to 0. That's a pretty good job we've done. Political reports. That same day, CDS Director Robert Redfield said it would be prudent to assume this pathogen will be with us for some time to come. And President Trump said on the 28th, it's going to disappear. One day, it's like a miracle. It will disappear. Political reports. 3 days later, Tony Fauci, NIAID director, told CNN he was concerned that as the next week or 2 or 3 go by, we're going to see a lot more community-related cases. Then on March 2nd, President Trump said, we had a great meeting today with a lot of the great companies and they're going to have vaccines, I think relatively soon. But Fauci repeats that vaccines will take a year to 18 months. And on March 6th, President Trump announces we have tests. Vice President Mike Pence the day before said, we don't have enough tests today to meet what we anticipate will be the demand going forward. And on March 9th, President Trump said, so last year, 37,000 Americans died from the common flu. It averages between 27 and 70,000 per year. Nothing is shut down. Life and the economy go on. And it is reported, hours after the president sent that tweet, Santa Clara County banned large public gatherings. 2 days later, the NBA suspended its season. The NHL, MLB, and NCAA would soon follow. March 10th, President Trump said, and we're prepared and we're doing a great job with it, and it will go away. Just stay calm. It will go away. And it is reported Surgeon General Jerome Adams that same day warned that this is likely going to get worse before it gets better. And March 12th, President Trump said it's going to go away, the United States, because of what I did and what the administration did with China. We have 32 deaths at this point. When you look at the kind of numbers that you're seeing coming out of other countries, it's pretty amazing when you think of it. Politico reported that same day, Pence said, we'll have thousands of more cases. Since Trump tweeted, the number of deaths have more than doubled. That's all the back and forth. President Trump didn't declare a national emergency in our country until March 13th. So the NBA and all those guys shut down. President Trump's still like, carry on. We're going to carry on. All the NBA and all those guys are listening to the World Health Organization and the CDC, and President Trump is like, we got it under control. And we're doing a great job. And because of the great job I did, and with China and these other countries, carry on.
Right.
So President Trump didn't declare a national emergency in our country until March 13th, and by the 17th, it is reported that COVID-19 was present in all 50 states. Then Trump said on that day, federal government is working very well with the governors and state officials. Good things will happen. Okay, let me repeat that. Then Trump said on that day, federal government is working very well with the governors and state officials. Good things will happen. And then the president's prior tweet said, failing Michigan governor must work harder and be much more proactive. We are pushing her to get the job done. The day before he tweeted, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has to do more. While he was doing what?
Yeah, right. Right.
Are we all good?
Yeah, for a little bit.
While President Trump kept saying everything will be fine, they have it under control, don't panic, nothing is shutting down, life and the economy go on, and it will magically go away, and they'll have a vaccine soon, and then said, I've always known this is a pandemic. I felt it was a pandemic long before it was called a pandemic. Oh my gosh,
Yeah, that one's a good one there. I
sorry.
How he can backtrack like that and make
This is what he does.
I know.
In everything.
That's amazing.
So that he keeps having the rewards and the glory. While he's throwing everything into chaos and pandemonium. And then not paying attention to reality or taking it seriously. And then when it becomes serious, I always knew from the beginning it was serious. While he appeared to not take it seriously or know or even realize it was a pandemic or speak the truth, just like the Chinese government didn't in the beginning either, for the very same reason, not to disrupt social justice or social order. and even more so for President Trump not to disrupt our country's economy that he worked so hard to build with a love for money and wealth. As he said, he loves money.
Yeah.
Well, one teeny tiny, little, invisible to the naked eye, but aggressive and possibly deadly virus came in and destroyed everything he worked for that he didn't want to see, acknowledge, or even consider in reality or have to deal with, let alone confess to, until the World Health Organization forced him to shut down our country for a season to protect and save our lives. But how many more lives could have been saved and debilitating illnesses on ventilators prevented had he truly taken this virus serious as a pandemic from the beginning, like he said he always knew was a real, that he always said, like he said he always knew was real.
Start that over there.
But how many more lives could have been saved and debilitating illnesses on ventilators prevented had he truly taken this virus serious as a pandemic from the beginning, like he said he always knew was real and was a pandemic long before it was called a pandemic. Once disclosure was being made in China, followed by Italy and Spain. Okay, actually, let me prelude this. So she had told me about Kevin McCarthy and what he had said, and she sent me a link to Kevin McCarthy. I had not heard of what Kevin McCarthy is doing or saying, so I looked that up. So now I have to address Kevin McCarthy. So then, after all this, and President Trump with all his delays and believing he/they have the virus under control, it is reported on April 17th that Kevin McCarthy slammed China for its deception on the beginnings of the coronavirus pandemic, accusing the country's actions of leading to the deaths of Americans and people around the world, and honored Trump by saying, you know, President Trump, when he was candidate Trump, warned us about China. He's gone after China. If there's one thing that should unite America here together is that we never let ourselves be in this position again, from critical minerals and others, ingredients that go into our medicines. The idea that China could put us in this program, tie up the rest of the world and corner the market and utilize that for the supply of what they have in medical equipment to get a better supply chain when it comes to technology, to spy on other countries. That is something that we should not stand for nor allow and change the direction. While he and others in our administration accused China of cornering the world market in personal protective equipment, and Mr. McCarthy also links that and medical equipment and PPE supply with also accusing China of technology to spy on other countries, which all countries/nations are spying on each other, including America. Okay, and Peter Navarro said on Fox News, we know that China knew about the virus as early as mid-December. We know that for a period of about 5 to 6 weeks, they hid the dangers from the rest of the world, even as Chinese citizens were flying around the world, seeding the world with the virus, end quote. Well, President Trump waited 7 weeks from China's lockdown before declaring a national emergency and slowly started closing non-essential businesses after sports teams and arenas already canceled their own events. Okay? And Yahoo reports Navarro saying, it looks like during that interval, China was basically attempting to corner the market in personal protective equipment, including masks. So they were buying large quantities of masks, gloves, goggles, respirators from the rest of the world at a time when the world was still sleeping with respect to the dangers of the virus, even though we were being made aware of it constantly. Yet President Trump was being told and fully aware, but not taking it seriously or preparing for it, while accusing the Democrats as the do-nothing party. The White House trade advisor said, Americans are getting infected because they don't have the masks. Italians are dying because they don't have masks. Healthcare professionals are going down. Yet Vox reports, for weeks, state legislators and healthcare providers across the country have called on the Trump administration to help with the lack of personal protective equipment available to fight the coronavirus pandemic. The Trump administration has meanwhile argued it is the state's responsibility to procure PPE, a stance that has led states to compete with one another for supplies and that has led to confusion on the part of the suppliers. After President Donald Trump declared the coronavirus a national emergency in March, he instructed governors to order their own ventilators and other PPE, saying the federal government is not a shipping clerk. Trump added the administration will help out wherever we can, but state leaders say that current efforts aren't enough and that the Trump administration's refusal to coordinate PPE distribution has forced them to compete with one another for supplies. A number of governors, including Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, have said they've seen orders for masks and other needed equipment canceled because the federal government outbid them. This has led, the federal government outbids them but says you're on your own to get your own.
Right. So they're already buying it up.
Yeah. You're on your own to get your own, and then we're going to outbid you and buy it all up.
And then do what with it?
So here comes the rest of it. This has led to some finding creative ways to disguise their orders, to mask them from the Trump administration. Baker's administration worked with Patriots owner Robert Kraft, the Chinese UN ambassador, and other Chinese officials to secure a shipment of 1.2 million face masks to the state. The governor told reporters Thursday he worked with the Kraft family to create a private humanitarian mission to keep the feds from finding out about the mask shipment and seizing it. And the masks came to the state on the Patriots team plane. Trump administration policy has left other states having to make similar extraordinary efforts to obtain PPE. For example, Illinois legislators rushed to deliver a $3.4 million check to a middleman at a McDonald's parking lot so that the supplier he represented wouldn't cancel the deal in favor of other potentially more lucrative offers. I put in parentheses, within her own country.
Right.
Quote,
Wow.
They successfully handed off the check and secured a shipment of 1.5 million N95 respirators from China. The goods states have received from the Trump administration haven't always been helpful. Local governments, in some cases, have received broken or damaged PPE. All right, so the goods states have received from the Trump administration haven't always been helpful. Local governments, in some cases, have received broken or damaged PPE. Montgomery County, Alabama's shipment of 5,880 masks had dry rot and were expired, although the county later received a replacement order. The city of Los Angeles was also given 170 broken ventilators, which had to be repaired before use. Critical medical supplies are being produced in the U.S., but instructions as to who will receive the products haven't been made clear to suppliers, a situation that has reportedly left badly needed supplies sitting in warehouses. Manufacturers who are making, now this is again all at the accusation, Kevin McCarthy and the other one, making accusations that China bought all this stuff up, hoarded it, cornered the market before releasing the data so that they had everything they needed and we didn't have anything and the whole world would be left without nothing. Meanwhile, the United States is manufacturing all these things and we have supplies sitting in warehouses.
Right. And then the government's buying it up, outbidding the states when they just told them to go buy it up.
Yeah, that they have to take care of their own.
Yeah.
Okay, so manufacturers who are making PPE at the request of the Trump administration told CNN recently they have not yet heard whether they should ship their products to states, to FEMA for distribution, or elsewhere. On March 24th, the Advanced Medical Technology Association wrote a letter to FEMA urging the Trump administration to decide how to allocate these products in the most effective way among state and local governments. Some of these potential purchases should have a higher priority than others based on the acuity of patient needs in their areas, the letter read. It is difficult for manufacturers to establish these priorities. The solution to this would be for the federal government to make greater use of the Defense Production Act, which would allow the Trump administration to coordinate production, procurement, and delivery. Trump, however, has made limited use of the act thus far, first to ask General Motors to manufacture ventilators and later using the law to prevent the hoarding or exporting of critical medical gear like gloves and surgical masks, a move some in industry like 3M have warned would likely cause other countries to retaliate and do the same. As a result, 3M claimed the net number of respirators being made available to the United States would actually decrease. These policy choices ultimately mean there will continue to be delays in getting PPE into the hands of health workers, putting greater strain on hospitals and caretakers, and that local officials and hospital procurement officers will continue to have to take extraordinary measures to get PPE. I put, so apparently we had and were manufacturing the PPE equipment, but the Trump administration left it up to each state to procure their own. And then when the Trump administration finally woke up and realized it was a pandemic and they should do something about it, they started outbidding hospitals and buying it all up without instructions where it should be shipped, while blaming China for buying it all up and hoarding supplies.
Yeah,
So-
this is just a cluster mess.
She responded back, "You certainly have researched things. Good for you. It's nice to know that you have that interest in America as well as Pakistan. No offense meant, because I talked to her about Pakistan and what I'm trying to do to help Christians in Pakistan." But she said, "We in this house are on the Trump train. You certainly can have your opinion of him, but so do we. Good grief. If Biden gets in with his dementia, oh my. Before you get cranky over that statement, I totally understand dementia, sympathize, worked with it for years. I feel bad for Biden, but he certainly doesn't have the mental capacity to run this country." I don't think Trump does either.
I don't think so either. He's obviously showing it.
Uh-huh.
He's a I love the saying, be proactive versus reactive. He's always reactive,
And then trying to be proactive.
pretending he was proactive.
Sure.
Yeah. Or wanting to sound that he was proactive.
Yes. To cover himself up.
But
and then
he
by
doesn't
by blaming others to protect
He
himself.
forgets, though, that this is 2020 and we record everything.
You know, that's what's so weird, because so many things that I've heard, reporters will ask him, and it's literally videotaped.
Yeah.
They will ask him and say, "You said such and such," and he'll say, "I never said that." And then they'll play the recording of where he said that.
Right.
And then they'll say to him, "You're disgusting. You're a disgusting reporter."
Right. Because they showed him what he just said.
No, this is before they even showed that.
Oh.
When they're saying, "No, you said that," he just says, "You're disgusting. You're a disgusting reporter. Next."
Yeah.
Next. So then they bring up what he said to prove it. And I then post that on my Facebook page, and I get people commenting to me saying, "That's all fake news." Because Trump says it's all fake news. And they all say, "Yeah, it's fake news." I'm like, "No, it's real news. It's actually really
I just don't
happening."
I just don't get it. I mean, it's right there, blatantly right in front of you. And how can you recant that? How can you say you didn't say that when it's your voice? It's just weird.
Well, he's not, okay, while he's in the press conference and they're saying, "Okay, so you talked to so-and-so a while back and
I
you
know,
said
that's-
such and
yeah.
such." He's saying, "I didn't say that."
I know.
So they're not recording
What
it
I'm
right then and there,
is,
but he denies he said it.
But what I'm saying is everything he says is recorded.
I know.
And then he goes and recants it like it hasn't been recorded.
Yeah.
So it's like, how can you even think you can get away with this? How can you even try to get away with this? Everything is recorded. Everything.
Yes.
Not only in the Christian world, God records every idle word we speak.
Yes.
Now the news records everything you say.
Yes.
So it's like there's nothing missed.
And then it's all gathered, and now
Yeah.
the reporters are reporting it, and
Right.
he's saying the reporters are reporting false news,
Right.
and it's fake news, and it's like,
Yeah,
no,
they went
it's,
back and made
you
his
can't
voice sound
deny.
that way. Yeah.
And then he said, and it's the left, and it's all the Democrats trying to take
Yeah.
me down and and they're just jealous because I won.
Yeah.
And then the Christians are saying the same thing. The left, and it's just the left trying to take him down and destroy him. And it's like, no, he's doing it all by himself.
Right.
So anyway, she said, Do we like everything President Trump does and says? Oh my, no. But he gets our respect. He is the commander in chief. And our vote. I responded back. I said, like last election, I didn't want Hillary or Trump in office, so I didn't vote, but voted for Jesus Christ in my heart as king, who has become my king and commander in chief. Likewise, I don't want Biden in office either, for he reveals himself to also be like a pedophile and fawns over young girls and women in a creepy, lustful way, so I won't be voting during this election either. She said, yep, I so agree about Biden. It's mind-boggling to me that others don't see it or choose not to. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I'm telling her all this truth and she's just dismissing it.
Choosing not to.
He still gets my vote.
Yeah.
And she said, I worked with many child molesters and sex offenders, so I am more aware as you are. That was all that.
Well, very good.
Yeah, so now we can
Okay.
post that. Thank you.